that joke, sorry. Okay, this is supposed to be a persuasive speech, and I thought, well, I'm not going to persuade any of you to be pro-life if you're pro-choice, or anti-death penalty if you're for the death penalty, and all those issues which the debates have long since grown stale and lifeless and all of that. And I thought, because it's a very rainy day out there, miserable, it's kind of like we're living in London right now, just perpetual rain. It's not going to cease until Friday, I believe, that I would talk about summer. And what is more summer than summer reading? Back in high school and elementary school, of course, we had summer reading. I remember when I was in 12th grade, I was assigned Dante's Inferno, Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, and a few other classics. And of course, being a good high school student, I consulted Cliff Notes the day before I was to be examined on these books coming back from summer vacation. A week later, my test was returned to me with a 27 on it out of 100. I wasn't a reader back then, obviously. I didn't really care for Dante or Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or any of those guys. I don't know how I became a reader, but I did eventually. My father maybe did it for me. And so today I'm going to kindly suggest some books that you can read during those days that you're baking on the beach in the summer. Now, I don't suggest really reading classics on the beach, because if you're at the beach and you're single especially, you're probably looking at the opposite sex. And if you're reading a novel, or God forbid, philosophy by some German philosopher, you really can't be distracted. And so if a beautiful woman walks by, you will be distracted. So that's why we read trashy novels on the beach generally, Harlequin romances and stuff like that. You don't read the classics when you're on the beach. You save those for your private study and all of that. But in any case, I thought I'd bring 7 novels that I love. Some of you have probably already read these, or all of them. And at the end of this, whoever wants these at the end of the meeting can take them, because I want to get rid of them. I've read them, some of them twice. I just finished one of these again. And I'm trying to declutter. I'm always trying to declutter minimalism. I embrace that philosophy, even with books. Books are my one thing I guess I get out of hand with. I had at one time over 1,000. So I'm trying to really get rid of them. Thomas Jefferson, by the way, had a library of 60,000 books. This is one man. Harvard, of course, has something like 14 million books in its library. That's Harvard. Okay, so to begin, we'll begin with, the cover fell off, by the way. Whoever takes this, don't take it personally. The cover did fall off. Just from a lot, and these are all paperbacks. I wouldn't give up away hardbacks, of course. I'm not that nice. Okay, Cervantes' Don Quixote, here you go. There it is. This is a wonderful book. Of course, there's that scene in there we all know where Don Quixote is out with, in the early going with the squire Sancho, his squire Sancho, and he thinks that the windmills he sees are giants, and with very long arms, and he goes about attacking these with his sword, and of course he goes up to one and is immediately annihilated by this giant. And then he tells Sancho that these giants transform somehow into windmills. Of course, Don Quixote is delusional. He studies all these books of chivalry and believes he's a knight errant of the Middle Ages. So this is a book which you can open up literally at any point and you'll start laughing. And if you don't laugh when you're reading this, you're abnormal and you should be examined. It's one of the great classics. Written in the early 17th century. The great line that its author had, he was wounded in battle at the Battle of Lepanto, lost the use of one of his arms, and he said it was to the greater glory of his other arm, and he fully justified the claim by penning this novel and a few other things, but this is what he's remembered by. Okay, now we're going to advance a few centuries, and where do we, okay, it's Thomas Hardy. Now we go from comedy to utter depression. It's kind of like going from Seinfeld to, I don't know, some really miserable sitcom. I don't know how else to say it. Hardy comes after Dickens, Eliot, Trollope, all those Victorians. And this is his 14th novel. And it's his last novel. The reason being is that when this was published, some people considered it pornographic almost in detail. There's an scene in here where two young children hang themselves because they believe they're a burden on their parents. And there's scenes in here where they slit pigs' throats. It's a pretty graphic novel. But the reason I found this novel so appealing, and I think you will too, is it's about the outsider. And we're all outsiders occasionally in life. And this is back when educational opportunities weren't what they are today, when you couldn't find student funding. And so it tells the story of Jude, who doesn't get student loans, and he wants to go to Oxford and Cambridge, but of course he can't. And there's a wonderful scene here where he's right outside the gates of Cambridge, similar to being right outside the gates of Oxford, and of Harvard rather, and you just see him there and he can't go in. Now today, Harvard admits anybody with an income under, who gives full aid to anyone with an income, their parents' income under $60,000. So Jude, this book really couldn't have been written today with the opportunities that exist. Now we come to what is known as naturalism, and one of my favorite books, An American Tragedy, one of the greatest indictments of capitalism ever written. Not that I'm a socialist, but it is, because it tells the story of Clyde Griffiths. And Clyde, like many of us, had desires which weren't natural, which were fed by Madison Avenue, and he grows up in a world and around people where he comes from nothing basically, goes to work at a hotel as a bellhop, and there sees all the rich and famous people, and that's where he wants to get. And this is his motivation, like a lot of people in America that just see something, they walk by a window and they want it. And so this is an early indictment of materialism at its worst, and based on a true story. What happens is Clyde advances in life, ends up with a girl, Roberta, who is of his social class, but he wants to go even further. So he kills his girlfriend and gets with the wealthy girl. In the end, he's executed. Okay, so another depressing book, but very good, 900 pages. The problem is Dreiser's not a great stylist, so there are some very clumsy sentences in here. That's okay. What else do we have here? Yes, this is a great novel. Zola. I can't pronounce it, it's in French. Le Sommaire, or whatever. It means the drunkard. It's about an alcoholic. And it shows a family, a husband and wife, as they descend into the pit through alcoholism and constant drink. But it's hilarious. And the thing about Zola is he's not sentimental about poverty like Dickens is sentimental about poverty. Novelists tend to glorify poor people and demonize rich people because that's easy and it doesn't require any nuance or complexity. Zola avoids that at all costs. And this is written in translation, and it's a wonderful translation, and it's only about, 400 pages or so it's a quick read. He's a French author again, this is in a series of 20 books. Balzac, one of his contemporaries, wrote 100 books on the same topic, which was, I believe, Napoleonic France. What else do we have here? Yes, the Bostonians. There's really no theme here, I apologize, I'm just kind of going from book to book. But the Bostonians by Henry James. Henry James is one of the greatest stylists ever, and I'm just going to test this by opening the book at random and coming to a sentence and reading it to you, and I'll see if it's a good sentence. It should be a good sentence. Let's test it. And I promise I haven't pre-planned this at all. So I'm going to open this, kind of like people did in the old days. They would open the Bible at random, and wherever their finger alighted, they'd follow the advice on the page. So here we go. Okay. The suffering of woman is the suffering of all humanity, Ransom returned. Okay, anyways, it's a wonderful book. Henry James, American expatriate, lived in England most of his life in Rye, was knighted actually, not knighted, made a British citizen in 1915. And this is about the suffragette movement in America. James was against it. He thought women should basically not receive an education. Ladies, don't let that dissuade you from reading the book. It's quite hilarious at times. The basic plot of the novel is that two men are contending for one woman, and they each want to put her life in a different direction. One woman wants to use it, a woman and a man are contending for control over a woman's life. One person wants to make her part of the women's rights movement. Another person just wants her, Basil Ransom, the protagonist in the novel, just wants her for himself. That does that. Now we move on to Elmer Gantry. Now this is, the evangelical movement in this country is very strong, and this was an expose of that. Elmer Gantry is about a priest or minister, whatever you want to call him, who preaches the word of God, then sleeps with multiple women and all of that stuff. And Mike is showing me time here. So I'll come to the last novel. 1 second. Okay, yes, this is the novel that you have to read. Okay, you forgot everything else. This is the novel that you absolutely have to read. Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann. Mann was a German, came over here during the reign of Hitler, actually taught at Princeton, then went to San Francisco. And this is a story of a German mercantile family, and it shows from the 4 generations, and shows their decline as it happens until finally they're left with no heirs and the family fails as a business. And this is back when concepts like honor and duty meant a lot more than they do today. But anyways, the prose is rich and wonderful and all that, and I've taken up more of your time than I should have, but I'll shut up now. Read these books. These are great, great books, and I don't want to sound like your teacher here, but avoid the Harlequin romances this summer and read some of these books, and take them when you leave, please. Thank you.